Hello, and as always, I thank you for coming to my show, Tell It Like It Is. I'm your host, Morris, man, and my co-host.
Joseph Spencer.
And today we're going to do actually a part two of a segment that we did earlier regarding gun control, because we've gotten a lot of response regarding that particular topic, and we didn't get a chance to completely elaborate, because it's a topic that we can spend literally hours on. So as a treat to our viewers, we're going to continue that conversation. And as with my last segment on that, my stance is this. The issue of gun control is more to me an issue of a decay in the family structure. And as a result of that, we have teenagers literally going out killing teenagers. That was unheard of when I was a teenager. Worst case scenario was you go out there, fight, and get beat up because you're trying to keep people from stealing your bike. Now you have these teenagers, 16 and 17 years old, that are carrying guns and literally killing innocent people that they don't even have a beef with. And we try to analyze what has taken place that have caused this terrible chain of event or this new trend. And my interpretation or my opinion was the breakdown of the black family structure. Because as I said the last time, when I was born, my dad was married to my mom before I was born. And the same thing in your situation. Now you have these kids that are out there shooting and killing each other, 17, and the majority of them, not all of them, I stress that, they come from that family structure now where daddy was never married to mama. They basically grew up living in grandmama's house who was taking care of their mama and taking care of them. You know, that's just not a way to have, a family structure. That's just you setting yourself up to fail. And we asked ourselves, well, what has terribly went wrong to cause this chain of events where now this is the new structure of the black family? And there are a lot of factors that have caused what we see now. And that's the issue that we need to deal with, because if we deal with that issue and try to bring back the original mother, daddy, married, and children family structure, that this whole gun control issue would literally almost, not totally, but at least tremendously go down, I mean, what are your thoughts on that again, Joe? What is causing what we're experiencing to happen?
Movies like New Jack City, Game Boy. That's another problem. All this stuff that have these young men and some young women, masculinity is killing and shooting people and killing people.
Because you mentioned in our earlier segment regarding the Vietnam War. So share and elaborate on that for our listening viewers.
Well, like I said earlier, the Vietnam War started in the late 50s. Myself personally, I haven't been to the war, but if I had gone to the war, I would have been born into this war.
Mm-hmm.
Like the average young black man or white boy or we didn't even never heard. It wasn't taught in school. We didn't know about no Vietnam. It was non-existent. It might as well have been on Mars. Everyone was walking around, what's Vietnam? Well, anyway, we had people going to Vietnam and coming back as junkies and alcoholics and murderers. Mm-hmm. They would have kids by 2 or 3 different women, go back off in the world with their drugs and alcohol. A lot of them are dead. A lot of them are still out here crazy, because I know some of them. Uh-huh. And that left a father out of these households. Like you said, grandma had to raise them.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point, because it kind of started then. And again, that's why, ladies and gentlemen, I have Joe as my co-host, because he can elaborate on some things that he has personally experienced and observed as a child before I was around, because it's interesting that that was a period of time that changed the black family structure and the lower income people structure, because that's when drugs was actually introduced to this country in large volumes. Mm-hmm. They were literally smuggling drugs back here to this country on the planes. They carried the dead soldiers back here. And for you people that don't know this, we lost the Vietnam War. We got our ass kicked.
Yeah, we lost the Vietnam, and it wasn't just like in the dead soldiers. I was living on the north side. I was going to Aristute. A lot of guys started coming back, and they would literally come back with duffel bags of opiates. The favorite was for me at the time was those Thai sticks. They actually literally would be in the jungle one day, the next day they'd be at O'Hare Airport.
Yeah.
You know, with duffel bags
Yeah.
full of opiates, and some of them had duffel bags full of cocaine.
Yeah, and that was the beginning, ladies and gentlemen, as we see the result of what happened then. Now, you know, it's still taking place. Because if I had to take a guess, or should I say, an assumption, I started to notice the breakdown in the black family structure. I would probably say in the late '70s, early '80s, when crack cocaine was introduced to the streets of New York initially, and
Yeah.
it spread it. I think that's around the time when our family structure, as we knew it, just kind of went south, or went south. Because prior to that, we were still trying to maintain a family structure of a man who married a woman who had children. During that time, it's like that kind of just fell off, and it became customary for these teenagers to be having sex in their parents' house while being taken care of by their parents, and now having children in their parents' house, which is really ridiculous, because you cheat your kids out of a balanced, normal, healthy family life structure when they grow up like that. Because here's something interesting. If we were to go back in time in the '60s and ask the little kid, draw your family structure, and I'm going to put this up here on the monitor. If you would ask the child from the '60s, say, draw your family structure, they would do this. They would draw a picture of mama, then them in the middle, the child, and then daddy. Now fast forward 20, 30 years later, 2013, you ask the black child, draw your family structure, and you get this. You get mama, you get the child again, and now you have grandmother in the picture that has taken the place of dad. And that shouldn't be. I mentioned that yesterday. I coined a new term, the surrogate father, and that's grandmother. She just stepped into the role of daddy and trying to take the role of daddy and do that. And what you're doing is doing an injustice to your child and your grandchild. Because, again, your child has a mother and a father, and those people need to step up and be responsible and fill in their position, as opposed to they're getting support from mama because now the dad is gone. He's out the picture. You know, that's one reason why we're having the issues we having as far as these young guys going out there with guns and shooting each other. You know, it's not an issue, again, of gun control. It's an issue of the breakdown of the family structure, and more so the black family structure. You know, it's just sad that it's the way it is, but we are ignoring that and just dealing with the surface issue at hand, which is young kids going out there and shooting each other. But there's a reason why they're going out there and shooting each other, and that's what we should look more into, as opposed to just take the guns off the street and we're going to be okay. No, that's not going to work, and it's not going to be the solution.
There's so many different, so many different reasons why this gun violence is going on. One reason is that the bigger the population you get, you're going to have more sociopaths.
Yeah, and less jobs. We're cutting jobs in this country as opposed to increasing them, because when I was a teenager, there was X amount of teenagers during that period. Now these teenagers now, they literally doubled in size, which means you need more jobs, or somebody needs to stop having kids. You know, one or the other, or a combination of both.
When you're 16 years old, and your mother and father is 16 and 17 years older than you.
Yeah, just 16 or 17 years older than you.
It's a trip.
Yeah, and they can't teach you nothing that they don't know.
Right.
And that's the problem. And I'm going to say these two things before they, get away from me. Observation. One day, this was about a year ago, I'm on my way out, and I see this young guy come out of this other building with his girlfriend. And I stopped there in my car, and I waited. I said, let me see if he's going to do one or two things. Is he going to be the gentleman that he should be and was hopefully taught to be, to open the car door for his person and then get in the car himself after he secured her? Or is he going to get in the driver's seat, slide over and pop the lock and let her come in? And unfortunately, he did number two. Now, when I tell people that story, they obviously get the first part, that he was not taught to be a gentleman. But let me just finish. Here's the second part that nobody caught. There were two wrongs in that scenario. The second one was no one taught the young girl to be with a gentleman, because if you teach your daughters to be with gentlemen, she would have said, you know what, aren't you going to open the car door for me? But she didn't, because she was never taught to be with a gentleman. So both of their parents, in my opinion, failed them.
That's why the kids call, and I'm older than you old school.
Yeah,
They say that's old school. But when
it is.
when you brought up to have open a car door for a woman, I think it's go more than having just respect for it. It's a feeling of taking care of
Right.
somebody.
It says a lot about
Care
the
for-
right. It says a lot about
I
the man.
care for this lady.
Yeah.
There's a possibility she can get slammed by the door. The door could be possibly be too big or too heavy for her delicate little hands.
Yeah.
But young black women today see that as being weak when a young man does it.
And that's because, again, on both sides of the fence, they were failed. The young man, unfortunately, was never taught to be a gentleman because, most likely, he didn't have a father in the house to teach him. It's hard to learn stuff when no one teaches you this stuff, you know? And that's, same thing with the young women. They are a product of their mother and grandmother, no daddy in the picture. I mean, our kids need a balance. They need daddy, they need mama.
I remember when I was a child, I would see my father and I would look up at him with adulation. And I did the same thing with my uncles. They were movie stars to me.
Yeah, you idolize the people that teaches you, supposedly.
Right. Now
Now there's this animosity. Where my daddy is, he don't love me. And that could be partially the answer to that question. But again, and let me touch on this. There's a documentary that every black person should see. Actually, everybody should see. It's not just about black and white or just about black here. It's about just the right things. And it's about a project that was erected in the early 50s in St. Louis called the Pure Ergo. It was actually one of the first projects that were erected in this country because prior to the projects, blacks migrated from the South here trying to find jobs because the crop jobs were going along to the wayside and they couldn't make a living, so they migrated up to the
all the factories.
Midwest. Yeah, so they were forced to literally initially to live in what was called slum conditions in these buildings. They became an eyesore to the city. The businesses were moving out, and the city decided to erect these projects to replace the slums, and they were initially called the poor man's penthouse, and they literally were. They were beautiful when they first built them, but here's something interesting that I didn't know that blew me away. The women that applied to move in with their kids and their husband, they were accepted with this stipulation that the husband, and I stress the husband, not a guy just sleeping with this woman or hanging out, the husband could not live there. So the government was literally systematically trying to divide the black families
Jim
back
Crow.
then. Because
Jim Crow.
that's outrageous that
That's
you're going to
Jim
split up
Crow.
a family.
But this is the United States have always been about Jim Crow. I don't care if you were in the South or the North.
Yeah,
that
in a subtle way.
mentality of that because they still think we came out of the bush.
Yeah, and the rationale for this was this nonsense. Well, it's a security issue. We don't want the men in the building. Yes, you do want the men in the building to protect the women. If you force these men who were married to these women out, then you had these outside guys coming in, sniffing around because there's no man to kind of keep them in line, to keep them away.
You said this. There was a story when I first got back in the States. I was hopping between Canada and New York and Chicago, back and forth in that circle, back in the late 70s and the early 80s. And there was a story when I came back that there were gangbangers. When they found a woman living in the projects by herself, they would go and take her.
Yeah.
They would literally take over her apartment, use her sexually, and there was nobody there to protect her.
Yeah, because the cops didn't really go up in those
No, they didn't go
buildings
up in the
regularly because they
building.
didn't care about those people. Out of
That's
sight,
why
out of
they
mind.
built them.
Yeah.
Projects, actually, they got the projects from Europe the same way they got superhighways. After the war in Europe, they started putting up them projects.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is when they start to build the projects in Chicago, which is my hometown, that they actually consulted some psychologists as far as, is this a good idea to crowd these people in this small space? And they did a scientific experiment with mice. And they took these mice, they were very docile, and they crammed them up in a little small space for like several months. And by the time the experiment was over, these mice had went from docile to very hostile.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with people. When you crowd us together, we get hostile. If we live in a family of I come from a family of 10. We were cramming in like mice, you know. Where there were times that we snapped at each other, not because we disliked each other. We actually loved each other, but you need your space,
You
know.
need your space. And it didn't take you 8, 9 minutes to come down an elevator or walk down some stairs to get on some grass. I don't care who you are or what your racial or economical background is. It's a grass and trees are important.
Yeah.
That's why in the old neighborhoods you had a front yard and you had a backyard and you could talk to people over the fence. You had your own piece of nature.
And you know what's interesting? When they survey a lot of prisoners who have life and not going to actually, unfortunately, get out of jail, they're going to die there, they ask them, what do they miss the most? And you know what that answer was?
The sky and the grass.
Grass.
Yeah.
Exactly. Grass. You know?
People you're going to have in the neighborhoods or high rise, the more people you get, the more people you have sociopaths and other crazy people.
Yeah.
You know, who want to shoot and kill and maim.
Yeah.
They just born like that.
Yeah.
But
go ahead.
But if you got people spread out, you won't have 10 sociopaths living in one block. So they can get together, oh, we're going to take all this crap over.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, again, when we talk about the gun control issue, to me, and this is just our opinion, you know, it's not an issue of gun control. It's an issue of the breakdown of the family structure. And until that get fixed, you can take all the guns off the street. They still going to stab you, beat you.
Even in prison,
You know?
they ain't got no guns, but they got shanks.
Exactly. And again, like I said in the other segment, it just kind of angers me that we don't see the light to say, let's just deal with the issue that we need to deal with. And that other issue goes away. And here's another issue, and it's kind of, you know, on the same track as far as violence and crime. If you give most people that commit crimes jobs, decent paying jobs, they won't do that. Crime is the last resort, ladies and gentlemen. It's not the first option. No one gets up in the morning and say, hey, I'm going to go knock over the liquor store down the street because I need some extra money. That just doesn't happen.
I truly believe there are people who are born like that. I like this jacket, so I got the right to take it. I'm bigger than you.
Yeah, well, those
I
are...
truly believe that.
Yeah.
I think I've seen it.
Yeah, and that's a small percentage of knuckleheads. I mean, yeah, that's knuckleheads, but we talking about just average people that are forced on to hard times,
Yeah.
and as a result of that, they go out and do stupid things. You know,
But
the jails are full of guys and women that have just done some stupid things.
What make a man or a woman go live in a cardboard box instead of going sticking somebody else up?
Conviction, the way that they were raised. They're just not wired to be criminals. Most of us are not wired to be criminals, and some of us are.
Yeah.
You know, but everybody's different. That's a good point. Everybody's different. You can put a group of people in the same scenario, and you're going to have different results each time because of the way you were raised, the way you interpret life, the way you respect your fellow human beings. And there are a handful of people that have no respect or regard for human life whatsoever. Regardless of what you do for them, that's just who they are.
They're
But those
sociopaths.
people are very small in percentage as far as the problems that we are experiencing on a daily basis all throughout the country. And again, I believe that it's the issue of the breakdown in the family structure because the majority of those young guys that are out there shooting, driving through and shooting at people, they don't have a father at home, never had one. You know, they don't know who their daddy is. He's in jail or dead. You know, mama was just sleeping with this guy when she was 15 years old and had a baby by him.
But some of them do have fathers at home, and their fathers, this is the way they brought up. Don't take no shit.
Yeah, but that's a small percentage of people that have that balance and still go out and do stupid things. But yeah, it's not to say that because you marry somebody and have a children that you are totally exempt from that child going wild. Absolutely not. But the percentage of that is so small that it's even not hardly noticeable on the scale.
Excuse me.
But the percentage of the young men out there that don't have a daddy and never had a married father, daddy in the house, those are the people, unfortunately, that are causing the mayhem in our streets today. And that's what we need to address and deal with. But instead, we're just going to try to take guns off the street and think we're done. No, we're not done, you know? We're not done until we analyze the family structure and see what we can do to fix that. We just spinning our wheels because I've had conversations with people from time to time regarding this topic, and I've heard this, and it's unfortunate. Well, you can't do nothing about that. You know, you can't change the way people think. No one's trying to change the way people think. We're trying to just get them to see what they're doing is not necessarily beneficial to them in the long run. Now, I look at it this way. You know, we got technology just wonderful. Cell phones, I would have never thought when I was maybe in my teens that there would be a device that I can use to stay in contact with people with and didn't have a wire. Anywhere in the world, I can be reached on this thing like a James Bond flick. So if we can do this kind of stuff, we can talk to people or young folks and try to educate them to say, hey, this is the path that we want you to take that will work. This path here is a dead end. You know, I think that we can do that. I have faith that we can do that, as opposed to we can't change nothing. You know, we can't make people do what they don't want to do. It ain't a matter of making people do what we want them to do. It's letting them see that what they're doing is not beneficial to them and their children. Because I do believe that most of us love our kids, and we would do anything that we have to do to make sure that they're safe. That's all I'm saying, and that's my plea. And on that note, I'm going to turn it over to Joe, and we're going to wrap it up. What are your thoughts, your closing remarks?
My closing thought is hey, do the best you can. Help people when you can. Tell the truth. Try to tell the truth all the time. Don't be a taker, be a giver. It's a hard way to go, but in the long run, it's going to pay off. It may not pay off for you, but it might pay off for your grandkids or your great-grandkids. Yeah. We all have a responsibility for the future. And as I was saying, children are the future. Stop killing our kids.
Okay, well, and on that note, as always, I thank you for coming to my channel. Tell it like it is. Keep thinking.